What's up, you guys? We're out here at Eibach right now. So I'm gonna take you guys on the tour that we get, show you guys what they got going on here. Turns out we're the first visitors that have been allowed here since March when COVID really hit. So we're getting a behind the scenes look at something that not a whole lot of people get to see. We're super fortunate. So here we go. We're gonna go inside and check it out. Second shop we toured in California was the Eibach facility. Actually, it went pretty good. That's what your shocks start out like. For me personally, Eibach's a place that I've looked up to as a manufacturer in the car industry. And I knew that their facility was pretty impressive just from what I'd heard throughout the industry. But how large their facility actually is in real life is honestly overwhelming, because a lot of it was like some pretty technical manufacturing stuff that Dalen would be able to elaborate a little bit more on. I know that they had some really cool robotics. They had some really cool testing machines and whatnot to help kind of test out shocks and things like that before they would go out into the market. But honestly, it was just a really, really massive facility, not only for storage, but for manufacturing, testing, and everything else in between. It was just that, really impressive. And to be honest with you, like I said, a lot of the information that they shared with us kind of went over the top of my head, just being that it's not really my forte necessarily. But I suppose I'll let Dalen tell you a little bit more about Eibach, because I have not much else to add other than it was cool.
Eibach. No, it's actually Eibach, I promise, unless you're French. But yeah, so our next stop is Eibach. And so we're the first visitors to Eibach since March, which felt really weird. Parking lot, huge building, huge expansive parking lot, and there's nobody there. Jared, who is our rep there and has been working there for a long time, Jared and Jaren are two guys there. Great guys. They were able to convince their team to let us come visit and go on tours. So obviously we're all masked up the whole time. We took COVID tests prior to going out there to make sure we were negative and kind of avoid people as much as possible. We go through their COVID process, which was intense and awesome, just because you don't want to have any mistakes like that. You want to keep up and running. So we make it through the first door, and we go through the labyrinth of hallways that they have, and we go to their showroom. It's just this huge, beautiful showroom that is just empty. It's got all the products and awards and photos, but there's no people. The desks are empty. The lights are shut off. It's just it's so crazy. These are always the hearts of these places. So we're kind of walking around looking at some of the older pieces on the floor, sample springs. They have one that's a spring for, I think he said it's train. It's this tall on me. I asked him to send me one. So if that makes it here, I'm gonna make it in my chair. And then from that to IndyCar dampers, which are this big. And then we kind of made our way out to the front of the building where he brought us to their R&D facility, which they're kind of going through right now, repainting it, making it look even more awesome. But they showed us the R&D facility, which has its entire own shock room. So rather than going to their large manufacturing scaled side of stuff, they can build shocks, redo spring stuff in this little tiny area. They're totally self-reliant on just that area. Their engineering team is right next to it. Super cool from a manufacturing side of stuff, how streamlined everything was.
Just why this is up here, because it's actually really scary to watch. You think of a car going down the road, it's no big deal. You pull that setup out of it and put it at head height, then you see you can literally see the tension and the small movements that happen in the spring, and just you stand here and you're
I don't know if I'm gonna go.
It's a little
nervous I want to be.
Yeah, so it can be a little bit different at sometimes, but this thing you can set up to literally run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a month or two at a time. So if you really want to, you just set this thing and just go home for the weekend, and it just comes back and it's just collecting data. And if it fails on this thing, and then we can go back and tear it apart. Figure it out there.
That should have been the light bulb that told me what I was gonna look at next was gonna blow my mind. So we get into the main manufacturing side of stuff, and we start out at the, where they manufacture the shock bodies and materials are kind of brought in for that side of it. And it kind of just blew my mind immediately. The level of sophistication in their manufacturing. You know, they're an old company, so it's kind of one of those things where when you expect an old company, you expect a lot of old machines. They're making springs and they make dampers there, but I didn't realize how big that operation was. So from just the lathes that are running what looked like 24/7 cutting damper bodies, spacers, the actual shims to go into the dampers, that was already crazy. And we keep walking farther and farther down the line, and we get to a point where we like stop and we look, and there's just this like robot picking things up. It's for honing the interior of the shocks. And so it can do 2 shocks at a time, rotates through, it's in a little cage, there's a guy watching it, just in case it goes iRobot on us or something, he can like shut it down and save the planet. But like each step, I mean, this isn't crazy for anyone into like normal manufacturing stuff, it's very normal stuff. But for the automotive side of it, as we see that kind of ramp up to these, what I consider smaller companies, it's just super cool to see the process in which it goes through. We just stood there, I think me and Charlie stood there just staring at the robot hand for like probably 15 minutes, just watching it go through an entire operation of, yeah, its hand motions were totally work safe, and how it kind of goes through everything, it processes it and then drops it in a little bin afterwards. Once again, it's not that it's like this like unheard of, you've never seen it, it's like I'm watching how it's made, but like right in front of me, and they're just doing cool robot stuff. So we got to check that out, and then the next step was we went into their shock room, which like, once again, I'm gonna keep saying it, my mind was just blown. I knew that Eibach was a shock manufacturer, a damper manufacturer. What I didn't know was the levels at which they manufactured these. So not only all their tooling, they're making all the parts in-house. They then, when they go into assembly, the levels of machinery that they have to assemble the product and then test the product is just insane. They have damper test rigs where they can do either just a damper or like a fully assembled damper with a spring and everything on it.
So it'll take a completely open tube like this, it heats it, and a big die comes over and rolls it over itself. So there's actually no welding.
Yeah, friction welding.
And there we've got pressure testers.
And they'll run it, one of their larger ones, they can run for like months at a time. And kind of that goes back to why they're able to offer such like I think it's a 1,000,000-mile warranty on most of their stuff. They're able to offer that because they're so confident, because they've put 2 million miles. Like they've run stuff through so many testing procedures that like, it doesn't even matter what we do to it. They've already done something that's 10 times worse. So for like all their off-road stuff that they're working on in there, that was super cool to see. But yeah, damper rigs that are like 4 times my height, like trembling above me with like cages around them so that, you know, something happens, you don't take a spring to the face, because that would suck. And just machines that are so automated that you put a shock in and it goes dun, 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 comes out, it's assembled, filled, it's got nitrogen in the system, like everything's good to go. Kind of moved through that, and then as we left the shock station, or like damper area, I'm already like trying to like mentally recover from what I just saw and like how cool all of it was. We go into their warehousing side of stuff, which is also, I mean, once again, it's not like it's crazy, but the way they have everything set up, the automation that they're using, the human that they're using to try to kind of do everything, and how expansive the warehouse is, that's super impressive. Walk through that, and we get over to the spring side of stuff. And for anyone who's never seen springs getting manufactured, it's super cool. I was lucky enough to see it when we were at HKS earlier in the year. Man, that was earlier this year. That's so crazy. It's all kind of just like, it feels like it was like 6 years ago at this point. The first time a spring coiled out and like they cut it, looked like Charlie jumped like 10 feet in the air, because like the noise is loud. Like when they're cutting steel that has that much tension in it, it just makes a very loud pop. And talking to Jared, I was like, how do you get used to this? And he's like, you don't. Like, we still hear that in the office and kind of like get surprised by it. They had to have hundreds of machines just making springs. Obviously, spring manufacturer makes sense, but watching the level of sophistication they have for left-hand wound, right-hand wound springs, the size of spring, and then they have test facilities at the end of basically each run of where they manufacture springs. They're able to pull samples and test a spring immediately right there. And if it doesn't pass, they go back and they have to go through and figure out why it didn't pass and what changes need to be made to either the programming side of it or the materials side of it. It's just expansive. Like it just goes on forever and ever and ever. From there you go over to where they shot peen all the springs, and it just looks like giant towers. We didn't get to see those runs, so I was kind of sad about that, but the way they explained it is that anything that isn't a solid chunk of metal, if it goes in there, it's not coming out. So it's just basically pulling all the tension out of those springs, so that if you get a set of springs, you're not going to see them settle like you would a lot of brands. They can almost guarantee that the advertised heights that you're getting out of your product, when you install the springs, they're going to be at that height. So unless like a bushing or a factory component is changing, you don't have to deal with any of that, which was super cool to kind of, you hear a lot of things that are like marketing jargon, but to hear and see the tools that they use to guarantee the results was super neat. And we got to kind of step over from there to the sway bar side of it, watching the dudes just handle like flaming hot metal rods and stomping them and pressing them, and that was just super cool. Once again, all this is just like a bunch of dudes making each product. Like there are the robotic side of the damper side, but on the spring side, this is just like a lot of hard work and dudes just doing this all day long. And the procedures they go through and the testing they go through is just super cool. So we made it through that. We made it over to like their powder coating. They do all their powder coating in-house. It just looks like a giant painting laundromat. Like it's super cool. It just goes on forever. Like you want to ride it like the monkey bars and see how long it takes me before it paints me, I guess. But so made it through that, got to see kind of a final product, got to see unbox it, got to see the world's coolest forklift. I don't think Charlie got any footage of this, how cool this thing is, but you sit in like the front of it, like you're like the master controller of the world, and it is just ginormous. I love forklifts. So we got to see that, kind of go through their picking and packing facility, which like, as you can see, we have a warehouse behind us. We kind of know a little bit about that. It's cool to see how other people do it. Moved through there, and then we got to kind of just hang out with them and talk about, you know, what they got going on, what their next year looks like. So we got to kind of sit down and fondle some of the older parts that they had, those springs we were talking about earlier, a lot of the stuff they make for NASCAR, for like the super speedway side of stuff.
So these are NASCAR super speedways that have been raced on.
Oh,
so
wow.
We get batches of springs back, and it's like, hey, one of these won the Daytona 500.
That's
like,
super
but
neat.
we don't know whose is it.
In their basically like R&D room or test room that they have, they're able to, every return that comes back, they test every single one and validate everything. Like just to look at the processes that they have and how organized every single decision that's made within that building is, from the manufacturing side to the testing side to the sales side, is just super cool. So yeah, so Charlie's asking me about the QR codes. So Jared wasn't super clear if they still were doing this, but one of the things they used to have for the super speedway springs was that for NASCAR, they had to be able to track every single spring, and then once they tracked it, they had to be able to report multiple reports on every single spring. So they actually had QR codes. I don't know if they were like laser etched in or if they were a sticker that went on, but there was a QR code and a number on every single spring, which, like, as you can imagine, there's a lot of springs. And for the teams, they could scan the spring with their phones, or, you know, whatever weird technology NASCAR has, like they scan it with their carburetor or something. And then that carburetor would pull up like all the test results of that spring. Just absolutely insane. And it's kind of one of those things, like I said in the beginning of all this, like Eibach's been around for so long, they make great product, they make great springs, use them for everything, but I just never thought about how much went into all of that. It's the same when people walk around here for the first time and see what goes into every one of our products. You just don't think about it when you're not there. And to see the level of technology that Eibach is utilizing to put out just, I mean, one of the best products is just super, super cool, and super appreciative that they were able to show us around and even let us in the building right now. So I just want to go back and like stand in the corner and watch stuff again. So hopefully they give us the chance to.
All right, you guys, so we just got done with the tour here at Eibach. We're just going to do one last final thing that we forgot to do when we left yesterday's tour. So last thing we got to do is get a nice photo in front of this sign here with, that's not the Supra, there it is. We just got to get one photo in front of this with the Supra and we'll be good to go. Huge shout out to the guys for having us here. We had an awesome time, learned a ton. Hopefully we can show you guys a little bit about why Eibach is such a good product, and everything they make is super high quality. So hopefully you guys learned a thing or two like we did. Last thing I got to do here is get out the phone and do a little picture. We'll do one more. Hey Dalen, you should move. You should move. You, just hide behind the car for a second. Oh. And that's it, you guys. Dalen, what did you think of the tour? Say it real loud for the people in the back.
That was super cool. Like, I mean, Eibach's been a company I've been working for like years, and even then kind of knew what was going on, but this was just mind-blowing to see just everything they have going on here, how they do it, why they do it. Very well done. Super cool company.
Yeah, huge shout out to him for the tour. Anyways, guys, if you like this kind of content from us, make sure you give us a huge thumbs up. It does help support the channel. And if you guys haven't already, hit that subscribe button for more content just like this. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.